G'day folks, Mad Aussie here and welcome to the Aussie Report. In this episode we're going to take a look at a former WA police officer who has been convicted of abusing 3 boys and is awaiting sentencing. So jumping over to the website here, this is msn.com and this article was posted on the 5th of September 2022. It's titled, Former WA Police Officer Who Sexually Abused 3 Boys to be Sentenced. Scrolling down, this says, a retired WA police officer with more than 40 years service, who was a friend of ex-Commissioner Carl O'Callaghan, is behind bars for sexually abusing 3 boys. Offences he only admitted after 2 trials and an appeal. The former commissioner was one of the people who provided a reference of Gary Edward Burton, 65, who abused the boys aged 11, 12 and 16 over more than a decade between 2003 and 2014. The district court was told one of the victims, who wanted to be a police officer, was invited to stay at Burton's home on the pretext he was going to take the boy to see the police complex at Midland, but instead he abused him. Another victim, who was 14, had an interest in a particular hobby which Burton used to get access to the boy. The court heard Burton made it clear that in exchange for helping the boy with the hobby, he had to engage in sexual acts with him. Some of the abuse of the other victim happened while Burton's wife was at church. Burton was first charged in 2018, the year after he left the force, and pleaded not guilty to all the allegations. He first stood trial last year and was found guilty by a jury of 24 offences. He was sentenced to 10 years and 8 months jail, but he won an appeal against his conviction and a retrial was ordered. It was midway through that retrial that he pleaded guilty to 16 charges. The remaining 8 counts were discontinued. Burton says he has no memory of offences. Throughout the court process, Burton has maintained he has no memory of the offences because at the time he had been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and depression as a result of trauma he had to deal with as a police officer. Today, his barrister, Philip Dunn QC, told the court Burton had been a junior officer with Carl O'Callaghan, who at one point at the Cannington station was also in charge of him. Mr. Dunn said his client felt he could talk to Dr. O'Callaghan on a first-name basis as a friend. Mr. Dunn highlighted that in the references, Dr. O'Callaghan said concerns about Burton's mental and physical health at the time were largely ignored by his supervisors. Burton was described in court as being depressed, anxious and suicidal, and because of that he was removed from operational duties and put into an administrative role because he was deemed not capable of dealing with the public. Mr. Dunn said that was around the same time Burton started offending. What they say is the offending occurred in a man who was psychologically damaged, not functioning in a very balanced and reasoned way, Mr. Dunn submitted. Next is Judge questions Burton's remorse. During the hearing, Judge Carmel Barbagallo questioned why, after 2 trials, one of which the victim testified at, an appeal and then a plea of guilty, Burton had not yet said sorry to his victims, saying, "I think that's what's missing here." That prompted Burton's lawyers to take further instruction from him, leading to Mr. Dunn telling the court he says completely he is sorry to the 3 victims and their families. He deeply regrets his behaviour, what he has done to hurt them and their families he is sorry for. It has taken some time for that 5-letter word to be uttered, Judge Barbagallo replied. Judge Barbagallo also questioned the submission that Burton was remorseful, with Mr. Dunn arguing that his pleas of guilt were an indication of that. They saw him stand up and plead guilty, stand up in front of the victims and say, "I'm guilty," Mr. Dunn said. However, that prompted another query from Judge Barbagallo. Why didn't he do that 18 months ago? Next is titled, Notorious Inmate Makes Prison Difficult. The court heard that when he was initially sentenced to jail last year, he had to be kept in a prison within a prison because he had been a police officer. Mr. Dunn said that time had been particularly difficult for Burton because a notorious inmate had taken a dislike to him, which led to him spending 23 hours a day in his cell. While Burton had been released on bail after he entered his pleas of guilty, today he was remanded in custody until he is sentenced. His defense team has argued because of his guilty plea to only 16 of the 24 charges against him, he should receive a jail term lower than the original 10 years and 18 months. Well, that's the end of this one. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.
You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me.